Good morning to you. It is Thursday morning, and as of 6:01 this morning, heck yeah, there's power. So what are we looking at? We're looking at my desk yesterday morning, having lost power Tuesday at 9 p.m. We had a high wind and torrential downpour event. And it was an eye-opener for me. I am not unfamiliar with storms in my neck of the woods. We got heavy snowfall, we got ice storms in the spring, and sometimes in the fall/early winter, but mostly in the spring. And of course, we get thunderstorms, and we are in the northern part of Tornado Alley, so it's not unusual. But I was not prepared. What? Shocker. I was not prepared. I've lived here for a year. I've been through a winter here, which had pretty heavy snowfall, not record breaking, over time, one or two that might have broken a record, I can't remember. But for the most part, I survived. I injured myself, but I survived. And I injured myself in the house, but that's a different story. So, let's take a little look at what has transpired and what affected my whole county. The worst of it was north of me, and they are still affected. But 87,000 plus people in my county had a rough time of it on Tuesday, Wednesday, and until this morning. Some people in my county still don't have power. So here is a tree that went down and took out a power light across the street. The power light spans the street, and we were looking at a parking lot. Here's some limb damage between us and the lake. We live across the road from a little park. It's a little 2-lane road, and there were some birch trees that went down. That is a big limb, and possibly, I can't tell from the shot, a whole tree that went down along the shoreline. We have this sand cliff, basically, that has trees along much of it west of me on the shady part of the park. Here's one in perspective with a light pole, and that thing just sheared right off. It's a miracle it didn't take down the light pole as well. It fell just south of the light pole, and you could see it was almost as tall as the light pole. And here's some illustration of some of the trees in the shady part of the park that went down at the base. Now, these trees, this is the one that's still out there leaning against two other trees. These trees, as a reference, some of them are very fast growing shade trees, but they're not very stable. And here's one of them. Look at that. That's not lightning, that's wind. 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds, gusting between 60 and 70 miles an hour, and this storm came in very fast. One limb went down, and actually when it bounced back up, it tipped one of the picnic tables. And it's still out there because they have not cleaned that part up. Although I will say, this community really surprised me. There was a swarm of, I'm assuming, high school kids out there yesterday because they did not have school. No buses were running, and they didn't have power in my community. And they came out and cleaned up all the small brush in the afternoon. Here's a view of across the lake where I'd like to live, and right on the point of a little peninsula is a tree down that cleared out a nice sunny spot for me should I ever get the chance to move across the lake. Here's where one of the trees on the bluff, the little I don't know, 15, 20-foot bluff, sheared off completely. Here's an illustration of another one of the trees, how it just went over. And this is one of those trees I was referring to a minute ago where there's two trees that have sprouted and grown up together very tall. Look at the size of that acorn. We have black squirrels in our neck of the woods, and the black squirrels, even though these are not ripe, they're out there probably just having a field day collecting acorns. And there's our girl, the shepherd. She just could not figure out what had happened to her environment, and she just stood there. I told her, go find something to do, and she didn't. She just stood there. Nice form, dog. Really nice form. And then when she got tired of standing, she sat, just looking at everything that had happened to her little park. And so finally, I, got tired of her just, being stunned. Oh, this view is back up the lake towards the west, and if you look above that weed in the foreground, you can see where two of the trees came down, kind of. That big blob of green is where the trees brush is. And here's my souvenir from the great wind and downpour storm of 2018, my first big storm. And here's where we're going to stop and have a little chat. And this chat has to do with storm preparedness and what you should be doing for your own benefit. This is my cold brew coffee maker. It's made up of some parts from Amazon that fit together perfectly, and so I had cold coffee yesterday morning. I was able to, this is today's brew, yesterday to today. It usually takes 72 hours. I cut it short. You can see the mesh cylinder that fits perfectly in this square jar, which is, I put a standard size spray bottle there so you could see how tall it was. It holds about a quart. And so I was able to have cold brew coffee this morning and yesterday morning. Yes, maybe we'll talk about cold brew coffee brewing at some other point, but what the point of this is right now is to illustrate that with some simple tools you can get ahead of the game. This is a fridge box, and it's, made for the refrigerator and freezer. You can see the water line where it was melting, and that was a 7-pound bag of ice, which I determined I needed at 11:30 in the morning. I thought for sure that our power would be back on by 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was wrong. And by 11:30 I had checked to see when our power would be back on, and they said sometime Friday. So I determined that I needed some ice. I put my fridge box, which normally keeps wine, into the freezer and threw a 7-pound bag of ice into that, which raised the temperature from 43 degrees in the freezer lowered it, from 43 down to 33, which, made me feel a little bit better. That's only sufficient if you get that ice in there as soon as you are able. I obviously waited too long, but that's only sufficient for maybe 24 hours or so. So now we're going to go to the big screen, and we're going to talk about a couple of things that will help you out a little bit more. I have an electric stove, so since my power was off, everything that needed to be cooked or warmed up, not happening. And that's, if you're going for like 36 or more hours, you need to cook something. You just do. So I had plenty of battery power um, and I threw an extra, small amount, $5 worth of data on my phone because I don't use my phone for surfing or anything like that. Since my Wi-Fi was down, I needed to add some extra data, and I did, so that I could go out to Amazon and find myself something that was not electric to cook on. And I determined after doing my homework that this one burner dual fuel um, uh, hot plate type thing would be what was sufficient for me. I really wanted a dual fuel, so that I could use both propane and butane, and I also really wanted a double burner so I could put a cast iron griddle on it, but those were too expensive. Maybe someday, but for right now, to get myself prepared for anything further in the, emergency needs area, this is sufficient. It comes with a carry case, and it comes with the hose. It's really important. You can see that highlighted in yellow. It comes with the hose and the adapter so you can switch to propane. Super important. So for the amount of money, this is what was sufficient for me and my needs. I also needed a continuous light source, so I went to what I know is a pretty safe bet, and that is a farmer's lantern. It can burn either kerosene or lamp oil. And so I'm already at 4 fuel options. They don't intermix. I can't use that same fuel oil in the little one burner, but it does give me options. And so this might be sufficient that all a single person needs to get them through, 72 hours without power, as long as it's not beastly hot or, frostbite cold. And we were very fortunate that this happened after having some beastly hot weather. So it's cooled down significantly here, and this will be sufficient. Now, you're saying to yourself, all right, that's $50 right there. And you're right. It is. So here is another option. Same fuel lantern, either oil or kerosene, and you can cook on it, and it is not quite half the price of what I spent. So this might be an option if you are a single person and are reasonably sure that your power will be turned back on. This is not by any means a long-term solution, but it will get you through a couple of days, maybe even a week, if you have enough fuel stored. And fuel storage is an issue that we might discuss in some future broadcasts. But right now, it is sufficient to say that these options are available and they won't break the bank. But you do have to plan for it. And I want to talk about what I heard outside my window last night, or not last night, Tuesday night, after the major part of the storm. And the major part of the storm whipped up between 8 and 9, and the wind part was over by 9:15 or so. It was still raining, but it was a much lighter rain, and there were neighbors downstairs. I could hear them talking. They had gone outside, as they often do, right under my window. I could hear everything they had to say. And what were they talking about? They were talking about, I need a laptop, I want a different iPad or, tablet or what have you. And I thought to myself, you have got to be kidding. You can't cook You have no light. You have a 2-year-old and a brand new baby, and this is your highest priority: a new laptop and a new tablet. Whatever, folks. If that's your attitude, this broadcast is not for you, and I can't help you. You have to discover these things on your own. So let's move on. So the next thing you will need is something to put what's in your refrigerator and or freezer in. And this is an affordable option. It will work. You won't be able to drain it, I don't think, with this model. I would not choose either one of these models. The red marks show you how small the wheels are, although the Coleman gives you a bigger wheel option. But my biggest concern is moving these around with these luggage type handles. I'm just not confident that they're going to work. Now, if you're going to go to a party wagon type thing, this brand is not the one to buy. I read the reviews. It has 4 stars, but I read the reviews, and where the yellow highlight circle is where the problem is. The wheels do not even affix properly, let alone stay there. They would never, you'd never be able to have the wheels stay on. This is the one I'm looking at. This one also is a 4-star. None of these party coolers were higher than 4-star. But the difference between the previous one and this one is that there's no complaints with the wheels falling off. So I'm seriously looking at this one. And it is an 80 quart, which is about 20 gallons. With ice and, food or beverage or whatever. And in this case, it would be food, because this would be the emergency food cooling mechanism. You can buy a propane-powered RV refrigerator, but they start at $500. So this at $150, some a little higher, some a little lower. This is a really good option. Let me point out a couple of things why I think it's a good option. Number one, you can move it. So if you don't need it, it's on wheels, you can store it somewhere with the lid off so that it doesn't become moldy. It has a drain hole, which is metal, not plastic. So conceivably you could find a brass fitting and affix a drain hose to it and drain it right into the tub if that's an option for you. It is for me, and that's what I'm going to do. The only downsides I see to this one, just looking at it, are the following. The lid itself has no insulation whatsoever. It's just a metal lid. And if you're going in and out of it a lot, if you're using it for a refrigerator type purpose in an emergency as opposed to a long-term freezer type use, that lid needs to be insulated. It just rests on the top, and in the reviews, the people who used it for an outdoor party cooler said that their guests did not make sure that the lid closed firmly, and that's a very thin wall of insulation. I've marked it where it lines up on the diagram. So I would probably make this thing look kind of ugly and put some pink insulating foam, hard foam, not fiberglass, around the top. Maybe I would encase the whole thing. I don't know. I won't know until I buy it and figure out what exactly I want to do about it. Maybe I'll only put pink foam on the inside and cut it to fit the inside of the plastic liner. But at any rate, maybe I'll do a video on that, on what I decided to do to up the R value. Um, in addition to that, I would make a blanket cover. And what I mean by that is you can buy a cover that just slips over the whole thing to protect it from dust and dirt and whatnot. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an insulating blanket, more like what you would find for a water heater to increase the heat retention of a water heater. And I would probably make some sort of zip cover so that the top, at least one side of the top, could be zipped up, and you could lift the one side. That top is only hinged. The whole cooler itself is one big bucket. It's just the top that's hinged. So, again, some sort of retrofit with an insulating blanket to increase the R value of the whole thing. And that would be for long-term storage. If for my daily use, I would probably get a smaller 30-quart cooler, camping or picnic cooler for refrigeration type use. This would be for longer term storage, hoping that I could keep stuff for a week. After that, you're really, you're looking at buying a propane refrigerator. So that's the basics of what you need to preserve yourself for more than 72 hours, I would say. That doesn't include the ice, and ice where I live is $5 for a 22-pound bag and $2 for a 7-pound bag. And this cooler, according to the reviewers, said that it takes at least a 22 plus a 7. And that was for beverages, it was not for food. So there's, an idea about what you need to get yourself started. And now, again, you're going to say to me, all right, now you're talking without the ice, you're talking about $200 worth of stuff, and I don't have $200 to just throw down. Well, I totally get that. I totally understand that. And I'm not saying you have to run out and spend $200 today. But what I am saying is that you should have a foam cooler big enough to, supply your family with milk and water and, some short-term food, some cheese, some sandwich meat, something. Whatever it is that your family will eat. And please, make sure that it's stuff that your family will eat, because when you're under, the stress of a power outage for more than 24 hours or maybe 36 hours, it's going to start wearing on your nerves a little bit, and you should have stuff that your family will eat, because, a case of ramen noodles isn't going to cut it. After 2 or 3 days, you're not going to want to eat it. When you're under stress, your appetite starts to wane, and if you have to do strenuous work while you're in this, situation, like, I don't know, cutting a limb that fell, you're going to need calorie dense energy food. So maybe I'll do another video on some more extended preparation. But you can do this on a budget. Every time you go to do your grocery shopping, or if you go to the dollar store, the Dollar General, Family Dollar, whatever, Kmart, Walmart, wherever you buy your regular stuff, budget $10 a week to add candles and dry goods and peanut butter and things that you know your family will eat in a pinch. Things that are easy to prepare while you save the money to buy these things. You need a light source. You need a food cooking source. You need a food preservation source. And so over time, you're going to have to give up the Xbox temporarily. You're going to have to give up the new tablet or the new laptop temporarily until you take care of these needs. And today is a good example for me. Today is the last day of CyberLink Power Director sale, and I could have gotten it for less than half of what it normally retails. Can't do it because I have ordered the lamp, the kerosene lantern and the one burner stove. By the time they get here, I won't need them, but you better believe I'm going to take them out and use them because I have a whole bunch of chili I have to cook up. Remember those tomatoes I was processing last weekend? They now need to be made into chili because my venison and my ground beef and some other meat, I'm not going to trust it without cooking it. I can refreeze it, but I need to cook it. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this little tour of our storm damage, and I hope you have a great weekend. I hope your weekend doesn't have any disasters and that you enjoy yourself. I will see you again either Sunday or Monday for sure. Thanks. Have a great day.